Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. It's not often we're going to say it's a football week around here. I sort of made that up about 6 weeks ago for the draft, but Luke Jones, it's a football week around here. It's a legitimate minicamp, and the first minicamp not run by number 5 in, about 13 years, or as long as you've been on the beat. This is going to be an interesting week, and this is the week where we grade every Lamar Jackson pass, right?
Well, we've been grading them the last few weeks with 1 day per week, voluntary OTA, and I think the media has been good in not overreacting to everything. I mean, keep in mind this is an offense that has installed a new system, and I think across the board there have been some growing pains, not just with Lamar Jackson, but the offense in general. But mandatory minicamp week, all the veterans will be there. And that includes all the veterans and all the players on what should still be a very stout defense. Now, maybe a defense that's not number 1 in the NFL like it was last year, but I think it will be a good test for Lamar Jackson and this offense to see how much growth they're able to make over the course of 3 straight days, having the entire roster intact. So I think
it's a strange practice, though, right? When you want to run the ball that much, it's sort of like the magnet football guys. Everybody's trying to get assignments and stuff, but man, there's a lot of legs getting taken out in the running game when you're practicing running game. If you're going full out, right? If you're going full.
Yeah, and I think that's something to keep in mind just in general. And I even made the point in some of what I wrote at WNST.net last week in talking about the Ravens and this offense, and making the observation that they haven't made a ton of plays. I think it's important to remember that this is still a run-centric, run-first kind of offense, and difficult to practice that when you're in a non-contact setting like you are in the spring. So I think from that standpoint, yeah, the offense isn't going to probably look like it's firing on all cylinders this time of year. Certainly you expect that to pick up in training camp in the preseason, and you hope it picks up even more in the regular season, but that is true, and that's something to keep in mind in evaluating offensive line play. That's something to keep in mind in evaluating Jackson himself. We know how important his legs and his athleticism are to his success, so it's not something he has to apologize for. It's just something to keep in mind, but I think after seeing 1 day per week over the last 3 weeks, I'd like to see a little more consistency out of him, like to see a little more consistency out of the offense, but it will also be the full defense on the opposite side of the ball, so it'll just be an interesting litmus test. It's still not the end-all, be-all mandatory minicamp week, but it'll be our last extended look at what this Ravens team looks like before come late July, when they strap on all the equipment and pads for real and really start to get this thing going for the 2019 season.
Yeah, this was always a little bit of an underwhelming thing. Even when Flacco was around, there competition and all that stuff. And how did Joe throw? And why isn't Joe moving in with I don't know, name your off-season Jeremy Maclin right now for 6 weeks or whatever. I'm more interested in all of the components, and not even really the preseason games, as much as the first time Hollywood runs away from somebody, right? Or the first time Lamar Jackson runs away from somebody. Because unlike, let's see, Torrey Smith, Jamal Lewis, maybe Jermaine Lewis, we haven't had a whole lot, Jacoby Jones, guys that ran away from people, literally. We have 2 or 3 guys on this roster that at some point during the season are going to run away from somebody. And when that happens, and there's a 48-yard gain and nobody can catch Lamar when he gets out in the open field, I think we will start to understand how dangerous this is. I think it all sort of crept up on us last year. You didn't want to believe in it because Flacco's on the bench. He's not right. Here comes this kid. Oh, they won this week. Oh, they won next week. And they won again. They won again. Then they start winning. I think in the offseason, I'm still looking at this as very experimental, but very exciting when it works. And I don't know that there's anything exciting about preseason games where you're trying to keep everybody upright. This is going to be a particularly challenged kind of offense, as I see it, to judge in any way other than let's kick the ball off week 1 and can somebody tackle him. And on a week-by-week basis, we found that to be pretty difficult last season, I should say, right?
Sure, and you need to see an evolution of this offense, and I think you will. And I think, Steve Bisciotti, with his conference call with season ticket holders a couple weeks ago, basically assured that Lamar Jackson's not going to be running the ball 20 times per game. And so we're going to see some evolution.
Keep in mind, it is his option. He has the ball. He can do whatever he wants with it, right? So if there's three or four more times a game, he's going to run it. He's going to run it. I mean, that's that.
And you don't want to eliminate him running the ball, because then you're taking away one of the skills that make him unique, makes him special. So
you're taking away the guy that's going to get us excited by picking up 38 yards, because
no question.
A linebacker's going to have an ankle move and boom, he's going to be gone. And I think we all know that ability is there. I guess what I'm saying is it doesn't make for fun practices.
Oh, I would agree with that. I mean, you mentioned Hollywood Brown. Marquise Brown's not even going to be on the field until training camp. I mean, he's still...
Well, that's why he's not running away from anybody next week, and he's not going to run away from anybody in preseason either, because they're not going to turn the Jets on to him. The first time we're going to see him is going to be right around Labor Day weekend, I would think, right?
He needs to play. I mean,
do something exciting. Do something that is going to... let's get him down on the track in Miami on September the 8th, and he'll make 2 or 3 plays that are going to probably dazzle us at some point. But between now and then, I don't know. I don't know that him making a cut in a purple jersey on a white shirt, and that's not happening this week anyway. I just think this is going to be a very sleepy... You and I are going to have a lot of these conversations saying, hey, what's going on? Well, nobody got hurt. Okay, when's the game? Well, September 8th. I think there's going to be a lot of that between now and then.
Yeah, and I would say that's the case most years. I mean, especially when you've been doing this a number of years, and you and I have seen how many different guys look good in the spring, disappear, look good in training camp, disappear in the preseason.
I remember when I thought Marshall Johnson was going to make the Colts back in 77 and 78.
Yeah, I mean, there's you think of guys like Nate Bowling and Justin Harper. I can think.
Come on, who was the running back that always was in the fourth quarter? He had 5 turns in 5 different places. Give me his name. Bobby, come on.
Bobby Rainey.
There you go.
yeah, someone who had 2 different runs.
No wonder I can't remember his name. It was preseason.
Sure, But, yeah, I mean, there's always an element of that. But I do think when you are talking about installing a new offense and understanding the competition level that they will face with this defense, even with the veteran departures, I mean, even worst case kind of scenario, and when I say worst case, maybe not worst case, that's not the right term, but let's say scenarios that are less than desirable for this Ravens defense, I still expect it to be a top 10 kind of caliber defense. Even with some of the losses that they sustain, because I think the secondary in and of itself is that deep, that talented. So that alone does provide some intrigue, at least some, as far as how this offense is going to move the ball against this defense in practice. Now, that's not to say that if they don't move the ball at all, that all bets are off and the offense is going to be terrible and we're going to be talking about gloom and doom scenarios, but I think it does provide a little interest and intrigue in that way. And seeing Marquise Brown in training camp go up against the Marlon Humphrey, I think there's some interest in that. How much is it worth in the grand scheme of things? Time will tell, but I think for this offense in general, yeah, there's certain elements, starting with your quarterback wearing a non-contact black jersey in practice, that we're not going to be able to fully glean what this is going to look like come week 1. And even week 1, I'm guessing that'll look quite different from when they get into week 8, week 9, week 10. So I think there's a lot of work to be done. I think it is a work in progress. I think it's important to keep in mind that we're still talking about a quarterback who has half a year of starts under his belt. And I mean that from either direction, either not being too over the top in concern, not being too over the top in optimism, because as I said on many occasions last year, and I've talked about this a lot with young players in baseball or football, I think we have a tendency to just think of it as being a gradual, linear kind of progression as far as a development, and ends up being much more peaks and valleys. You have your highs and your lows. You have your periods of time where you play really well, and you have your other periods of time where doubts start to creep in, and I think that's probably going to be the case with Jackson. That's probably going to be the case with this offense, and probably with this football team, at least at a couple different points, understanding how much personnel turnover they've had and how much they're going to be relying on some younger, inexperienced guys. That doesn't mean they won't get where they want to go and be in the postseason and win the division again. That doesn't mean any of those things are impossible whatsoever, but you are going to be counting on some younger guys, and I think as much as last year we talked about embracing the weirdness and how strange everything was at the end of the year and zigging while everyone else is zagging, I think there's still going to be an element to that just because of how different this offense is, how much it's going against the grain of what you typically see in the NFL in 2019. But I think at the same time, there's excitement to that. And even if that ultimately, even if we don't know how well this is going to work out from a long-term standpoint, to your point, some of the speed with Jackson, with Marquise Brown, with Justice Hill added to the backfield mix, you definitely have some guys with some speed. And I'll say this, even if it doesn't work, I still think we're going to see plenty of big-time kind of highlights. Maybe not every single quarter of every single game, but I'm thinking we're going to see a lot of big plays, and it's going to be interesting if nothing else. I keep coming back to that point as far as what this reimagined, redesigned offense is going to look like under Greg Roman.
We are WNST.net. He is Luke Jones in Baltimore. Luke out on Twitter and Luke at WNST.net. Got some house cleaning to do around here. First off, it's Father's Day week. Happy Father's Day to everybody out there. Make sure you're checking out our friends at Hammer and Nail. Special deal out there for all dads. It is the man cave. I'm heading out. My hair's getting a little long. I'm going to get a cut. You can do manicure, pedicure. They do it all out there, but they have televisions and refreshments, adult refreshments. It's Hammer and Nails, the man cave. Get out there. Make sure you take advantage of the deal and the Father's Day special. Buy Dad that gift card. You'll get some extra trimming, some extra niceties this summer. Stop on out there in Owings Mills. See them on the town center. We are back at State Fair in Catonsville doing some Baltimore Positive this week. And again on the 27th, we're going to be at Fadley's and eating crab cakes with the Divine Family. You'll hear that at WNST this week. That happens on the 20th. Next Thursday, Mayor Jack Young joins us. So make sure you check out Baltimore Positive at BaltimorePositive.com. Also on our Facebook, our Twitter, our LinkedIn, letting you know all of the stuff. Those are our 2 locations for now. But State Fair later this week and Fadley's with the mayor next Thursday. Full Circle Tire and Auto up in Harford County. Tires, more tires. 38 brands in stock. And Dave has been taking care of me since the Get Nasty van days. 1995 oil change at Full Circle Tire. And they got a new location up there. If your AC's on the fritz, I know we got a little cooler here last couple days, but that first 100-degree day, your AC, make sure they get a look at that at Full Circle Tire and Auto, 410-676 CARS, the way to find them. I had dinner at Roost Chris the other night with my wife, still polishing off the banana cream pie this morning, along with my Royal Farms coffee and my Cole Roofing mug. And Roost Chris, that's all I can say, man. Roost Chris. Pikesville, downtown. If you get down to Odenton, Annapolis, you've been anywhere, Pier 5's my location. Everybody knows that. Going to some shows this week. Maybe checking out Slightly Stupid on Thursday night as well. But a delicious, delicious T-bone we had. And delicious potatoes. And had some Brussels sprouts left over as well. I'm a little upset I didn't get the cream spinach, but I'll have a talk with my wife about that. Burger night is there. They also have happy hour deals every night at the bar. Roost Chris, get the chopped salad. We love it. See them at roostchris.com. You've heard us talk all about that as well. Curio Wellness, I'm wearing the Curio hat. Yes, they're a cannabis dispensary for all medicinal needs, but also a full-on spa, holistic wellness, but more than that, education about CBD and anything cannabis-related. My friend Brian Sanderoff will be here this week. Curio, that's the O in the hat. That's not the... Oh, I shouldn't say for the Orioles, how they did this weekend, because they actually won a game. Before I get back to football, Luke, I want to say David Ortiz was the nicest baseball player I met on the tour 3 years ago. And I know he's destroyed some, phone boxes here in Baltimore and hit some big home runs, and he's Big Papi, and he drops F-bombs and Boston Pride and all that. But I have always been a Big Papi fan, and I was even a more Big Papi fan when he stopped me in Toronto on the middle of my tour for no good reason and just started talking to me, literally. Hey, buddy, what does that shirt mean? What does the give a spit? What is this? What is this give a spit? And I started talking about my wife. He gave me a hug. He fist bumped me. He said hello to my wife. He took a picture with my wife's shirt, so I'm going to have to share that today. But I mean, the reality of my people in Venezuela and the people in Dominican and what safety is, and I know some people up in Harford County, maybe down in Anne Arundel County, Carroll County, would say that's why we don't go to Baltimore. Come on, man. You know what I mean? Like, I walk through the harbor every night. I walk the Roost Chris. It's a whole different life than what we're talking about here. And the kidnapping and everything that goes on in these countries, this is really something with David Ortiz and in the middle of a Bruins Stanley Cup game to have this sort of news come out and not be sure that it could even be trusted on Sunday night, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, some of the misinformation, some of the early speculation ended up not being entirely accurate, in some cases at all accurate compared to what actually happened, but just a scary situation. I mean, you just mentioned some of the unrest, some of the uncertainty, some of the stories you hear in various countries, whether you're talking about Venezuela with political unrest, certainly in this current climate.
Well, I remember parents of baseball players getting carjacked, kidnapped, taken off into the woods, the whole deal, man. Like, there's some scary stuff that goes on in these countries, and people wonder why it's tough for Melvin Moore to go back and live in Venezuela, and why you see him in Bel Air. This is what happens. I mean, literally, when I was in Argentina, we met an American family at a Rolling Stones concert, had like a really lovely experience with this American woman and her daughter, and she was American and explained, like, if anyone knew I was American, we would be at risk for being. We have to be Argentinian. We have to drive Argentinian. Like, literally where they are, she said we would be at risk. And just if the word got out. And it's really an incredible thing being American in other places, or being a target in other places, or having money in other places. But certainly for the baseball players, the rank and file millionaire baseball players, to go back to visit their families, it's dodgy. And everyone has always told me that. I've never been to the Dominican, but I know that about the Dominican.
Yeah, I mean, I think of it more in terms with the Dominican. I mean, some of the issues with some of the quality of the roads. I mean, we've seen players perish in car accidents. In some cases, even bandits of some sort putting something on the road to force a crash, and then robberies and sometimes murders. I mean, and look, I'm not going to pretend to know what the statistics are, as far as in relation to the population, but it's certainly disheartening when you hear a story of David Ortiz, love him or hate him, as far as whether you like the Red Sox, hate the Red Sox, whatever. You're talking about someone who means a whole lot to a ton of people in the Dominican, in Boston, in Major League Baseball, and to hear such a story, I mean, it's frightening. And fortunately, it sounds like he avoided any catastrophic, any kind of injuries threatening his life, but to just think that he was in an establishment, and sounds like he was signing autographs and just being friendly with people, and the reports indicating someone just came up and shot him in the back. I mean, it's just it's scary, man. And I mean, certainly we've seen tragedy and horrible stories, even that hit very close to home here over the last couple of years with gun violence and things of that nature, but I
remember being not real happy when Loch Raven High School was under gun lockdown last year. Lost a sponsor over that one. I'll tell that story one day.
But it's definitely from a sports world standpoint. And look, I mean, stuff like this happens every single day, unfortunately. But from the sports world standpoint, it hits home when you're talking about someone who a larger than life kind of personality. Certainly in Boston, certainly in the Dominican, and anyone who's a big baseball fan. Even if you didn't care for David Ortiz's antics, taking 45 seconds running around the bases, that kind of stuff, that certainly doesn't equate to what happened in the Dominican Sunday night.
Here's Luke Jones. He will be out at minicamp all week. You working on the tan? Or are you going to 30 or 15 here? I mean, you're getting ready for Wildwood and all the pizza you're going to eat down there with whatever his name is, Mac, right? My dad's name,
Max Pizza in Wildwood.
That's my dad's name.
I'll probably be working on SBF 30. You want to be a little cautious early on, and then you get that decent little bronze, and maybe you can switch back to something a little bit lighter as the week goes on. But that tends to be the the protocol that I follow for mini camp and training camp.
Yeah, look, as much as I bagged on practice offense, and especially practice offense when you're going to run the football 80% of the time, the defense in August will be fun for me to watch. When the defense comes out and plays these preseason games, just to see who's out there, where's 29, who's lining up where. Is Earl Thomas still a Hall of Famer? Is Marlon Humphrey trying to become a Hall of Famer? How much does Carr have left? Where's our pass rush? What's it look like without Mosley? Hey, where's Sizzle? All of that's going to be happening in the games, I think, in August, that the defense flowing to the ball a little bit and seeing new players. I think the defense will be exciting in August, as exciting as preseason can be. I don't think the offense will ever be exciting until the Jets go on, because I think there's a vanilla part of everything they're going to want to do until, the game starts. I think we'll see what they're going to do in Miami. We know what they're going to do, but how they're going to do it's going to be about X's and O's and offensive linemen and all this sort of stuff that we're not going to be judging so much in preseason games. At least I'm not going to be.
Yeah, I think there's some merit to that. I'm more intrigued to see the offense in the preseason than you are, because I don't think you can just slow play this thing and just roll the ball out week one and expect to be fine. You've got some new parts. You have a young quarterback. I think there's a temptation to try to keep some things under wraps, and I think they will. I don't expect them to roll out their entire playbook. No one does in the preseason, but I still think you want to see Lamar Jackson do some things throwing the ball, be a little more consistent in the preseason. So there's going to be that. But on the flip side, to your point, I am intrigued to see what this defense, specifically with the front seven. I think the secondary, you know what you're going to get there. Other than saying, okay, is Earl Thomas the guy he was before 2 broken legs in 3 years? I think there's some fairness to that, but I don't think we're going to see Earl Thomas a whole lot in the preseason. He doesn't strike me as someone that's going to play more than a series or two. Maybe other than the third preseason game, he'll play a little bit closer to an entire half. But I think that front seven, okay, Brandon Williams, check. Michael Pierce, check. What's the rest of the defensive line rotation look like? I think that's very much up in the air with guys like Chris Wormley and Zach Sealer. And how does Willie Henry look after he had an injury-plagued year following a 2017 season where he looked like he was on his way to maybe not becoming a star, but certainly being a standout performer for them. So how does the defensive line look? What does the rotation look like at outside linebacker?
That's fair enough. There's a lot of guys playing for jobs. Right? Maybe in a way where we haven't had as much of that going on. And, the Brent Urbans aren't here to kick it around anymore, right?
Right. There's going to be plenty of competition. And, my goodness, look at outside linebacker. What can you say with confidence about that group other than Matt Judon's going to be the starting Sam outside linebacker, and Jalen Ferguson will be on the roster, guarantee, because he's a third-round pick. But other than that, what can you really say about the rest of that group? That's absolute. I think Tyus Bowser's safe because they're going to need someone else who can drop into coverage and be a reserve Sam backer behind Judon. So I feel confident about his roster standing. Tim Williams, I have no idea. Pernell McPhee, I have no idea at age 30, and understanding that there were concerns about his knees 5 years ago. One reason why the Ravens didn't pursue a long-term contract with him. Shane Ray, former first-round pick, had a good 2016 season. He's been hurt since then and had, I think, 3 wrist surgeries on the same wrist, and that's a major injury for a pass rusher who has to use his hands. So there's so many questions there. Inside linebacker, I do think the Ravens are more confident than the outside world is as far as Patrick Owaso's ability. And I would say kind of Kenny Young and Chris Board, Chris Board, kind of the latest former undrafted free agent who I think will be in the mix for some playing time. So I think they feel better about that group, but at the same time, doesn't mean you're replacing a 4-time Pro Bowl linebacker in C.J. Mosley and not missing a step. That's a loss there. And one thing I've grown a little tired of is I know everyone wants to disparage players when they leave via free agency, and we say, oh, they're overpaid, they're overrated, etc. Going through all the different reasons why you talk a guy down because you you ultimately had to make a decision, a business decision. Look, I have no problem, and I have no disagreement with the Ravens not paying C.J. Mosley $17 million a year. But don't sit here and tell me that they're not going to miss him at all, because you start doing that, playing that game, and say, well, Eric Weddle was old, Terrell Suggs was old, C.J. Mosley was overrated, Zadarius Smith was a one-trick pony. You go through the list, it's like, well, those guys were among the top 6 or 7 players in snaps played last year. So if you're all hot and bothered about the Ravens having a number one defense, but all those guys weren't so good, then how is this defense so good? I mean, explain that to me. So they're going to have some growing pains, and I still think this is going to be a really good defense, don't get me wrong, but they're going to miss those guys, and they're going to be counting on some younger guys to step up. And it's really easy in May and June to just flippantly say, oh, they'll be fine. This guy, and that guy will step up, and they won't miss a beat. But when you get to the point where you start kicking it off for real, and you're missing 16 years of experience with Terrell Suggs and over a decade of experience with Eric Weddle, and C.J. Mosley, half a decade of Pro Bowl caliber play, even if he's not the best inside linebacker in the NFL, you're going to miss some guys like that. And there's going to be some adjustment, and you're going to have some growing pains, and you're going to need some other guys to emerge as leaders. And I'm not saying those things won't happen. Let me be very clear about that. But I think some people have been awfully quick to puff out their chest about the Ravens having the number one defense last year, while at the same time being so dismissive of the guys that did depart. Those were some significant losses, even if you can go through each individual decision and say, yep, I understand Eric DeCosta making that call. I would have done the same thing. My point is, it's not mutually exclusive to say good business decision, but also a guy that the Ravens are going to miss. And I think that you could make that argument for most of the players that departed this offseason.
And we've never had an offseason like this with this much, age, plays, history. I mean, and you almost forget Flacco. I'm just talking about defensively. Weddle, Suggs,
sure.
Mosley. You've talked about those
Super Bowl
guys.
47 comes to mind. I mean, Ray Lewis retired. Ed Reed departs. Paul Kruger departs. Donnell Ellerbe departs. So you're talking about a couple Hall of Famers, even if they weren't Hall of Fame caliber players at that point in their career, but the wisdom, the experience, and then a couple guys who were pretty key parts to what they did with that defense in 2012. It's easily the most significant turnover they've had since post Super Bowl 47, especially on the defensive side of the ball. As you mentioned, that doesn't even mention Joe Flacco, who, of course, didn't play down the stretch last year, but signals even more that this is a new era for Ravens football.
Luke will be out for the new era in Ravens football out in Owings Mills all week long. All of our WNST coverage and our Baltimore positive stuff brought to you by our friends at the Modell Lyric. I was there Sunday night for Bill Maher. Eddie B was there on Saturday. Big weekend of comedy. Everybody's laughing. JoJo Sy with this week. I am headed over for the Marvin Gaye musical Pride and Joy this weekend. Diana Ross later in the month. And you've heard the Johnny Lang ads in July. My wife is actually checking out the schedule saying, hey, Temptations and Tops are coming too. We got to get to the Modell Lyric. Learn more at modell-lyric.com. Lee Tessier and the Tessier team selling my condo. They can sell your property as well. You need a realtor. You need someone you can trust, someone who knows the market. And Lee Tessier and his team, over 50 years of experience helping local buyers and sellers just like you and me connect and get their homes bought and sold. Learn more at leetessier.com. Also, our friends at Cole Roofing and Gordian Energy. Billy Cole will be here to give me some therapy on Wednesday. Much needed therapy. You can learn more at coleroofing.com about all the solar stuff that they do. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. All of our work can be found in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. The morning newspaper ships digitally, and we're about to freshen up the morning newspaper. So if you get it, you're going to get a new look in a couple of weeks. I'm looking forward to that as well. More of Luke's stuff, more of my stuff, more video, more audio, more news. The WNST morning newspaper. Last but never least, breaking news happens first on the WNST text service. I'm hoping Luke swallows the whistle on the WNST text service this week, because it would only be bad news. So I will be keeping my phone far away and not on vibrate. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford Security Boulevard. And, of course, Dennis back in the spot he's supposed to be on Thursdays from 3 until 5. He did Friday last week, back on Thursday this week. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 at WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.